What's good, family? So mash the like button, subscribe, and lick off the bell. So, as you might have seen by the title, Team Tyson, Fury, have exposed Dillian the shillian shite for being a scary ass. Bottom line. Now, how have they exposed Dillian the shillian shite for being a scary ass? Well, and I promised you, man, a few days ago that I'm going to bring you, man, the leaks, but you best believe that the leaks have arrived expeditiously. Now, the first point, the first evidence, what would you call it? What's the evidence called? Either way, listen, evidence one. Yeah, how about that? Evidence one. You see on your screen right now. Tyson Fury versus Vladimir Klitschko. What do we know about 2015? Yeah? 2015, Tyson Fury was an unbeaten fighter. He believed he was the best. He had not beat any top names. He had not beat any top tier names of the times, if that makes sense. Yeah? That's what he hadn't done. All he had was a belief in himself and a hell of a lot of gas to prove. Yeah? And he knew, I've got no belts, I've got no big wins, I've had no big purses, I've really got nothing to work with here. But in fact, to be fair to Fury, I never actually remember him talking about any of that crap. I remember 2 years before that, back in January 2013, I believe it was, or was it 2014? Either way, whatever year it was, I think it was 2013. January 2013, Tyson Fury was desperate to get in David Haye's knickers as well. And David Haye jacked it, embarrassingly enough. Jacked it, 100%. Yeah? But on both occasions, Tyson Fury wasn't all holed up, all posted up saying, oh man, well, you know, I'm a businessman and I'm worth 45%. He wasn't doing that. Yeah? I'm not sure about the David Haye purse, but I guarantee you, he weren't, I guarantee you Tyson Fury weren't petitioning for 45% for the first fight. That's what he weren't doing. Yeah? Now, because that would have been a random fight, Haye versus Fury. The purses aren't public, but because of the mandatory nature of Klitschko and Fury, we know it was 80-20. That's what Fury was fighting for. Now, as it happens, I do believe Vladimir Klitschko wanted, the reason why initially in 2015 Fury and Klitschko couldn't come to an agreement is because Klitschko wanted 80-20 and he wanted his rematch clause as well. Because Vlad did have a rematch clause, as we know, obviously. Or as he went on to execute. But eventually, I think Klitschko ended up making it 75-25 in the end. But that was because Klitschko wanted a rematch clause. So what's important about this Dillian Whyte situation? Oh, OIB. Klitschko, Fury got 70-30 or 75-25 when he fought Klitschko. So why can't Dillian Whyte get the same? The difference is, people, the reason Dillian Whyte's only entitled to 20% is because, guess what? Tyson Fury, and I respect Tyson Fury for this, especially when you consider the recent nature. I mean, people like Floyd Mayweather, people like Klitschko, people like Anthony Johnston, all of them, man, have demanded rematch clauses. Yeah? So I respect Fury for whatever reason. On a case-by-case basis, on this case, the fact that Tyson Fury doesn't fear Dillian Whyte enough, or doesn't respect Dillian Whyte enough to demand and to negotiate for a rematch clause, that gets held in high esteem. There's no two ways about it. You can be mad, you can be whatever. That's the bottom line. And Dillian Whyte should be saying, you know what, Tyson Fury, I'm going to punish you for thinking so little of me. And when I knock you out, I'm going to take my 20%, I'm going to take my belt, and then if you want to get your virginity back, it's going to be 90-10. And like I told you before, Dillian goes in there, does all the stuff he's been talking about doing, he will have every right to demand 90-10. Because, I mean, if Dillian Whyte fights at 80-20, and he knocks Tyson Fury out, I mean, if you've knocked a man out, and you only got paid 20%, then you have every right to make 90% in the next fight. 100, and I'd back that all the way. However, the problem is, as I've been saying, Dillian the shillian shite is trying to run, and all of his fans are trying to run before they can walk. You are not the champ, Dillian. Just like Tyson Fury in 2015. Imagine it, people. And it's interesting, a lot of Fury fans are they're overnight fans. They don't really understand. I'm not saying I'm a historian, but in terms of recent history at least, people don't realise that back in 2015, can you imagine if Tyson Fury had gone to Vladimir Klitschko and said to him, "Oh, I'm not going to fight you unless I get 45% or 40%. He would have been laughed out of there, and rightfully so. They'd have laughed at him. 40%? You got no belt, you got no big wins. What planet are you on? You've had no big purses. What planet are you on? So I rate Fury because I remember I was following boxing closely at that period. And I never remember hearing nothing about in the David Haye fight and the Klitschko fight, I never remember hearing no hiccups of Tyson Fury saying, well, we need to negotiate, and yeah, I'm going to fight Vlad, yeah, I'm going to knock Vlad out if we can negotiate. It was never anything about negotiating. He was saying, I want to fight. All I care about is having to fight to prove myself. He was desperate, he was rock hard to prove himself. That's what the narrative was from Fury, and that's why I actually told you, man, I was initially a massive Fury fan. And it was because of these kind of things. Now later on, because he never used to really pull out and do all the other funny stuff, but later on, me and him didn't really get on so much, but but them times, that's what, it's a bit like Conor McTapper as well. Conor McTapper and Tyson Fury around a similar time, they were both, in my opinion, inspiring. These days, Conor McTapper is washed, but Fury, it's a bit hit and miss. In recent times, he's in my good books, yeah? Not demanding a rematch clause is held in high esteem. That shows a true disregard for your opponent, especially in this age where everyone who's anyone demands a rematch clause. And the fact that Tyson Fury is acting this way towards Dillian Whyte makes me even more makes me even more certain in this 80-20 situation. Yeah? Dillian Whyte, if Dillian Whyte is anything half of what he talks about being, he should be bang on this. Bang on proving himself. Anything less, all he's doing is trying to hustle. Because like I said, if Fury had talked about 40%, never mind 45, if Fury had talked about 40% with David Haye or Klitschko, he'd have been laughed out the room. But for some reason, Dillian, a man, no, don't forget people, when Tyson Fury fought Klitschko, he was undefeated. I've had people telling me, YB, what are you talking about? Dillian Whyte's a massive name in boxing compared to Tyson Fury at that time. Dillian Whyte's a man who's lost twice. And I really hate to break it to you, but he hasn't lost to people. Rant and rave about how great these people. I just don't rate the people he's lost to. Oh, Johnston. I mean, look at Johnston. Now, I'm not saying that Dillian didn't fight a better version, but I'm not going to get into that. The point is, yeah, Dillian had an opportunity to redo that AJ loss. He had an opportunity to redo that. He chose not to. That's on him. He got a loss. He didn't go back and redo. Povetkin, he went back and redone it, but again, going back and losing and going back and and this is what I've said about AJ. Losing, yeah, and going back and redoing it, that's not the same as not losing in the first place. And again, that's why I respect Tyson Fury even more, because, and I'm not saying every fight, I'm pretty sure in the Wilder fight they had a rematch clause. As it happens, Fury didn't have to execute it, but in this particular case, I respect it because it is risky. It's risky to go into a fight and not have a rematch clause, because you can end up getting bent over on a 90-10 thing. Look at AJ. Always got a rematch clause. Always able to fall back on, oh, if I lose. It's almost like it builds in a gives you another option. Well, if I lose, it's not so bad. I can just go back and do it again. That's not how the sport's supposed to be. Every fight, you should fight like it's your last. And I give Fury credit because recently, in that last fight, that's how he's been fighting. Fighting like it's his last fight. Not, well, I've got a contractual That's how AJ fights. AJ goes in there and he's kind of like, well, Eddie Hearn's got the contract sewn up, so if I just go in here and have a training session with Usyk, I can go back and have another go. That's not cool. Yeah? You sucked in the Ruiz fight, and now you're sucked again. It's played out now. How many times? What is it, Johnston? Is it every other fight you have to lose to go in there and get it right? That's not. I don't know. That's not what the sports. That's not the principle of the sport. And back in the old days, that's how it used to be. People were desperate to get their shot. They'd take their shot, and then when they became the champ, they could then call the shots. People these days, they get with a high-powered promoter, and they think they've got more value than they're actually worth. Dillian Whyte, as I've said before, all Dillian Whyte is, he got with Eddie Hearn. Well, really, not even Eddie Hearn. Dillian Whyte was lucky to get with Sky. That's it. Sky have a massive 50 million person, 30 million household fan base. Yeah? So, that's why Dillian Whyte was able to get on pay-per-view. But even on pay-per-view, people get way too gassed about the numbers he's done. Dillian Whyte's never sold over 500,000 pay-per-views. Yeah? And that means Dillian Whyte's fights, all the total revenue of Dillian Whyte's fights are maxed out at like 13 million. And that's before the broadcasters, yeah, they take half off the top. So if Dillian Whyte does 500,000 pay-per-views, yeah, that's only $10 million. Sorry, £10 million. So you've got £10 million, and you've got a 2 million gate. The network's taking half off the top. There's 6 million. You're only down to 6 then. And my man's talking about he wants 10. And 10, well, 10's just mental. And you know what? And this is the thing again, for me, Dillian, if you want 10, yeah, how about that? How about this? If you want 10, if you're so sure about 10, I can't understand why you can't just wait one fight and you can then get 20. Yeah? In the rematch. Now Fury may, if you knock Fury out, Fury will have the choice then to run off and not fight you. But either way, from your point of view, you'll be known as the man who knocked Tyson Fury into scarydom. I just don't believe. I think Tyson Fury, he'd have to come back. Even at 90-10, he'd have to come back. Otherwise, his legacy and his career would be done. But either way, from your point of view, you're sitting pretty at that point because you'll be champion. And that's the gamble you've got to take. And don't forget, people, the way you man carry on and you sniff at $5 million, you make out. Dillian's never made $5 million plus pay-per-view split. For all he knows, he's probably going to end up with 10 anyway. But it's kind of like Dillian wants 10 guaranteed, and then the pay-per-view on top, he wants like 15. You're living on cloud cuckoo land, Dillian. Absolute cloud cuckoo land. You need to take the 5 million, take the pay-per-view split, and if you want more, I suggest you sell it. I suggest you sell the shit out of this show. Tables flying and all sorts. That's what you can do. That's what you should be thinking of doing. How can I add value to this event? Not how can I get something for nothing. Not how can I sit in court for a year and hold everything up. Because Dillian Whyte had never had no problem fighting bumps. And I've heard from Dillian Whyte fans, and even myself, I've been listening to Dillian, hearing him, Dillian's a yard man from Brixton, yeah, all this kind of stuff. And then it comes to it, and he's all of a sudden, and he wants to he wants to be a lawyer, he wants to be a businessman. And I'm not saying you have to be completely naive and dopey and get bumped like by Don King. Obviously, you need to be on your numbers, but you have to know your place as well. And I've been saying this for a long time. Since this debacle started, I've been saying, Dillian Whyte, this is your fight where you show the world who you are. Just like Tyson Fury in 2015. Even though sporting shillicons and whoever else love to blow smoke up your ass and gas your ego up, I'm telling you now, as someone living on planet Earth, you have not had that fight yet. Oh, YB, he beat Rivas, and YB, but he beat Povetkin. He got knocked out by Povetkin, and he came back. And even if Dillian Whyte did beat Povetkin, what's that? That's not a breakout fight. Povetkin ain't a world champion. In fact, all Povetkin's done is get beat by world champions. So what's wrong with you, man? Weird. Oh, but YB, what about Rivas? What, a cruiserweight? which he got put down by, and he went life and death with. You man are wild. Seriously. Oh, but YB, what about Joseph Parker? Again, he went life and death with Parker. Someone who AJ boxed to death. Parker didn't win a round against AJ, and Dillian Whyte went life and 50-50 with him. So you got to know your place. This is the fight, Dillian, where you can become the person you now think you are. All it is, yeah, it's a case of knowing your place. And Dillian, his one fight too early. He thinks he's already beat Fury. That's how he's acting. He's acting as if he's already had the big fight. He's already, and I wouldn't even mind so much. Let's say Dillian, yeah, had beat AJ back in the day. He'd have a bit of a claim. But you literally, all you've done is lose to the top fight and turn down. So wait there, you lost to AJ, and then you went on to turn down a rematch with him. That's not, them actions is not filling anyone with confidence, or that doesn't add value to your case here. Oh, but YB, what about how he's been done wrong with the WBC? Listen, if you've been done wrong with the WBC, you need to seek damages against the WBC. Got nothing to do with Fury. This is about Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte, mandatory. That's it. No more, no less. If you need to seek damages, seek damages. But in the meantime, you should be fighting if you're a fighter. And we're gonna find out who Dillian really is. Is he a opportunist? Which I think, I'm gonna be honest. If I'm gonna be honest now, I think Dillian Whyte's an opportunist. I think if he can get something for nothing, he will. But I don't really believe he believes in himself, like he talks about being. Because the reason I've been so turned off, and the reason every day that goes by, I'm repulsed by Dillian, is the fact that he gassed everyone up, and now look. It's a bit like the reason I was so supportive of Tyson Fury back in them times, back in 2015, was because all he sold us was the smoke. Yeah? He wasn't trying to be a businessman. Tyson Fury said, I want Klitschko bad. I'm rock hard for Klitschko. Even though his style wasn't exciting, it was the mindset. He wanted Klitschko. That's what he wanted. Tyson Fury was scared Klitschko was going to duck him somehow and run off and retire. That's what the narrative was about. The narrative wasn't about, Dillian doesn't want to fight if it's not for half of the purse. What? You told us that Tyson Fury's got chicken legs and Tyson Fury's got no chin and you knocked him out in sparring. What happened to that narrative, Dillian? Because that's gone. We haven't heard you talk that for about a year now. Or tell a lie. Ever since, this fight actually became real. No joke. When this fight became real back in September, that's when Dillian filed his lawsuit. Which again is more evidence that Dillian is trying to be an opportunist. He didn't file the lawsuit for the last 3 years. He waited until the shot was about to happen, and then he thought, I'll file a suit now so I can try and use this to leverage to get in a bigger purse. That's what you call an opportunist. That's not someone being real. Someone being real would say, you know what? I've had 3 years to file a lawsuit. I haven't done it. Now let me take this shot with 2 hands and go and do what I've been gassing everyone up for the last 3 years about. These people who try and be smart in the courts and whatnot, it's not a good look. It's really not. Not when you've had ample time to do these, to be in the courts. And especially when your case in the past has been a lot stronger. Before you got beat by Povetkin. Whilst Deontay Wilder was champion for about 5 years. And he was ducking you for 5 years. Whilst you got shafted from the Dominic Brazil final eliminator. Whilst Tyson Fury got elevated to immediate mandatory challenger above you, even though he hadn't fought any top 10s. Why hasn't Dillian, every single one of them examples, was a point in history where I said, why isn't Dillian filing a lawsuit here? Because every time something like that happened, he was being done wrong. And Dillian didn't do nothing. He was too busy fighting Malcolm Tan and Derek Chisora. Now, you get your shot and you want to be all in the court. It's mad. But anyway, listen, Tyson Fury, for anyone who didn't know, Tyson Fury has seckled and has shot down Dillian Whyte's dead-ass arguments, yeah? Tyson Fury has fought for 20% before, and he actually went on to do what he said he was going to do. Now, I'm not saying he knocked Vlad out, but he won, bottom line. Oops. And the same, to be honest, with the Wilder fight. In Fury versus Wilder 1, Fury accepted a 60-40 split. Yeah? 60-40. He acquiesced to the champion. And that was even after the fact that he, to some extent, Tyson Fury still had the lineal championship and the Ring magazine belt or whatever, because he was the last man to beat Vlad. A man who, by the way, Wilder ducked. And the reason that's relevant is the fact that even though Tyson Fury was unbeaten, even though he had beat Vlad, even though he had all the belts and had never been beaten in the ring, Tyson Fury was still prepared to accept a lower split. How can you argue with that? He accepted, I haven't got a belt, Deontay Wilder's got the belt. Dillian Whyte, you don't have a belt. You don't have an undefeated resume. You don't have a Ring magazine belt. You haven't beat the man. You haven't beat Klitschko. So why is it Tyson Fury can accept a 40% split, but you think you want 40? And you went nowhere near where Tyson Fury was then. Yeah? And that's the other thing as well. When Tyson Fury accepted 60-40 from Wilder, he was miles bigger than Dillian Whyte is now. If you know what I'm saying. Think about it. Back in 2018, Tyson Fury was massive. Well, bottom line, he was a winner. Never been chinned. And he accepted 40%. But you think that you're some big wig. And it makes no sense. The fact that Fury accepted 40, there's no way on God's green earth you can even talk about 40. You're damn right you're worth 20 from where you're sitting and looking at. So suck it up and crack on. If not, if Dillian don't accept this fight and the fight don't happen, and or Dillian waits, I've got my base case is the WBC have ordered the purse bid by January 11th. So let's wait and see. Maybe, and listen, if Dillian does come and make an agreement, I'll put my hands in the air and say fair play to him. But even so, it's still a shame that he couldn't have just done that. He should have just, like I said, if I was advising Dillian, I'd have told him, take the 30% and let's crack on. And let's get back on the narrative of selling this fight. Because, I'm not being funny, the amount you've turned people off. You've hurt this pay-per-view more by trying to be a smart ass. You've completely flipped the narrative from everyone being rock hard to watch this fight to, he obviously ain't that confident. So, if this purse bid, or if this deal isn't made by January 11th, we're going to know that Dillian is essentially trying to wait it out until March. If Dillian Whyte waits till March, because he thinks, wait there a minute, we're in arbitration, mate, I think it's going to work my way, and that will prove Dillian Whyte ain't serious. He's not a serious boxer. Dillian Whyte will be known as the bum slayer. Dillian Whyte will be known as the man who loves to fight a bum, but don't want to fight no real fights. Which is why he ducked AJ, and which is why he ducked Tyson Fury. And from that point on, from January 11th on, I don't want to hear no more about Dillian Whyte. I'm done. Literally, I'm done with him. Don't want to hear no more. I don't want to hear about how good he is. I don't want to hear how hard he is. Because you'll be known as the man who stay fighting bums and random fights that no one care about. Simple as that.